But I'm just like I've said, this is a project that's going to take up probably the majority of my life. My whole life. From birth to death. It's going to take up a big chunk of my life. I take my art I take it to heart a lot. I'm very close to it.
You may know Ethel Cain from the songs American Teenager or Strangers, or maybe even the unreleased song Tongue, which all had their own viral moments on TikTok, drawing listeners in with their haunting lyrics and captivating sound. However, what you may not know is that Ethel Cain is more than just a musician. She's a character. Ethel Cain is the character created by Hayden, Silas, and Hedonia. Hayden spent years carefully crafting and perfecting the intricate story of Ethel Cain, a persona deeply tied to the themes of trauma, identity, and Southern Gothic Americana. This character came to life within her debut album Preacher's Daughter, released in 2022. The album tells a narrative filled with emotional depth and complexity, exploring the struggles of faith, family, and self-discovery. Hayden's attention to detail and storytelling allowed Ethel Cain's world to unfold in a way that captivated listeners, establishing Hayden as a unique and compelling figure in the music scene. Before her debut album, Hayden had released 3 EPs under the artist name Ethel Cain: Carpetbed, Golden Age, and Inbred. While none of these EPs directly connect to the overarching story of Ethel Cain, they represent an important phase of her artistic journey. These projects mark her early exploration of sound, identity, and character work as she honed her voice and creative direction. Each EP serves as a stepping stone, helping her find her footing as an artist and experiment with the themes that would later become central to Preacher's Daughter. The music in these releases laid the groundwork for the intricate narrative and emotional depth that would define the debut album, offering fans a glimpse into the raw process behind Ethel Cain's creation. Preacher's Daughter is a hard-hitting 1 hour and 16 minutes of heartbreak, trauma, and death. It is the first piece in a trilogy she plans on making. Hayden recently stated that this trilogy would take her entire life to complete, with the first part finished and the second part intended for her mid-30s. That being Preacher's Wife, the story of Ethel Cain's mother, and the third, Mother of a Preacher, focusing on the life and experience of Ethel Cain's grandmother. The ambitious trilogy will dive deep into the themes of generational trauma, faith, loss, and identity, with each entry exploring the impact of these themes on different generations of women. Hayden's commitment to taking years to complete the trilogy shows her dedication to crafting a deeply personal, evolving narrative about family, survival, and redemption. But today, we're going to focus on Preacher's Daughter and the tragic story of Ethel Cain. But before I begin telling you the story, I want to give a huge trigger warning for all of the topics seen on screen. All of these topics are in the Ethel Cain story and will be mentioned during this video, so please proceed with caution. Family Tree Intro is the first track of Preacher's Daughter. In this track, Hayden introduces the foundational elements of the story. We begin with a recording of a preacher from Hayden's own grandmother's funeral, immediately immersing the listener in the album's religious themes. However, it quickly becomes clear that Ethel is trying to leave her religious upbringing, seeking a way to move forward despite her past. She admits that although she's tried to hide these parts of her life, they are almost impossible to escape. With her late father Joseph Cain, a preacher who tragically died in a fire, Ethel feels tethered to the past in ways she can't break free from. She tells us, "The fates already fucked me sideways, swinging by my neck from the family tree," expressing the suffocating weight of her family's history. The line highlights her belief that the first mistake, the original sin of her life, was being born into a family with such deep-rooted trauma. The extensive generational suffering she has inherited is a curse she feels unable to escape, and this sets the tone for the rest of the album, where Ethel grapples with the darkness of her heritage and her desperate longing for liberation. American Teenager, track 2, although sonically the most upbeat on the album, still carries a dark undertone. The song has a nostalgic sound, as Ethel looks back on her life before the album's main events. She talks about cheering for the high school football team, memories of her childhood, and the neighbor's brother who died in the war. She justifies his death by saying he wanted to go, so maybe it was his fault, showing her growing skepticism towards the idea of sacrifice and the typical American dream. We also learn that after her father's tragic passing, Ethel has been leading the church services for the past 10 years. But the weight of this responsibility is beginning to break her down. After her lover, Willoughby Tucker, left her, Ethel turned to alcohol to numb the pain. She's losing her faith in God even though she continues her father's church service. This internal struggle between holding on to her duties and the growing emptiness she feels shows how much she's changed, torn between the life that she was taught to live and the one she's trying to survive. A House in Nebraska is our true introduction to Willoughby Tucker, the one person Ethel says is the only man she ever felt comfortable around. In this track, Ethel opens up about a house in Nebraska where the couple spent their time. In reality, it's an abandoned house in Alabama that the both pretended was theirs, a small escape from the world. Despite the struggles both of them faced, when they were together in that house, everything seemed perfect, or so Ethel believes. She formed a close bond with Willoughby's family, and even his mother would reach out to check on her from time to time. Though Ethel tells her she's fine, it's clear she's devastated as the one true relationship she's ever had come to an end. She feels an overwhelming sense of guilt, but we're never actually told why or what led to Willoughby's departure. Even after he leaves, Ethel continues to hold on hope that he will return. She drinks to numb the pain, waiting for him, but despite her longing, he never comes back, leaving her trapped in a cycle of heartache and unspoken grief. Western Nights is the fourth track on Preacher's Daughter. Ethel meets a new man, Logan Phelps, essentially a rebound to distract her from the pain of losing Willoughby. Logan is a known criminal who shows little interest in Ethel's emotional well-being, only caring about the sexual side of their relationship. Ethel convinces herself that she's happy even though deep down she's miserable and trapped in a toxic cycle. In the track, Ethel talks about her father completely ignoring the fact that he's dead, saying she hasn't spoken to him because she doesn't want him to worry. This is the first clear sign that Ethel may be an unreliable narrator as she fabricates stories to make herself feel better and perhaps even to protect others from the harsh reality of her situation. Her attempts to rewrite her own narrative reflect her deep denial and self-deception, trying to escape from the weight of her grief and trauma. We return to Family Tree, now a more developed version, where we learn that Logan has now proposed to Ethel. She wants Logan to make a woman out of her, despite clearly not being ready for such a transformation. We also learn that somewhere along the way, her mother had become violent. It's unclear as to who the violence was directed towards, but it left a lasting impact on Ethel, reinforcing the idea that violence was the superior solution to any problem. Ethel's now husband Logan was killed in a failed robbery, leaving her emotionally shattered, disconnected from love, and indifference towards her own self-worth. She describes her life as feeling like hell, but that no longer scares her. After enduring so many painful and traumatic experiences in her past, she has grown numb to fear and suffering. In hard times, Ethel revisits her traumatic childhood. At 9 years old, her father, a respected preacher, began sexually assaulting her. The abuse only lasted a year, but left long-lasting scars on Ethel. As a sheltered child, Ethel was vulnerable to manipulation. He exploited her innocence, disguising abuse as love, hiding his true nature behind his status. Ethel wishes she could see her father as others do, but memories of his predatory behavior haunt her. She begged him to stop, but his actions worsened, fueled by feelings no parent should have. Despite the trauma, Ethel acknowledges her father's dual nature, the good person he was outside of the abuse and the abuser. The complexity lingers, a painful reminder of childhood trauma's lasting impact. This ends Act 1 of the album. Beginning Act 2 of the album with Thoroughfare, we are introduced to a new character, Isaiah Abram, a man from Florida. Ethel is in a fragile state, carrying a gun for safety and clearly struggling with her own emotional turmoil. She crosses paths with Isaiah and seemingly of her own free will gets into his truck. However, not long after, a missing persons poster began to appear, stating that it looked like she was forced to be in the vehicle. This marks the second indication that Ethel may not be a reliable narrator, as her version of events begin to contradict what others believe happened. Isaiah allegedly asks Ethel if she wants to travel the West with him to find love, a question that seems at odds with Ethel's previously expressed belief that love holds little meaning for her. Despite her cynicism towards love, Ethel agrees to accompany Isaiah on a road trip to the West. Along the journey, they eventually find love within one another, or at least that's what Ethel believes. Her perception of their relationship is coloured by her emotional state and past trauma, leading her to view their bond as something deep and genuine, even if it may not be as simple or true as she hopes. In track 8, Gibson Girl, we learn that Ethel and Isaiah have reached California. But the situation has taken a darker turn. Isaiah has begun feeding Ethel drugs and exploiting her in the back of nightclubs, turning her into a commodity. Ethel is deeply confused and unable to fully grasp what's happening to her. She convinces herself that if it feels good, it can't be bad, using this rationalization to manipulate her own perception and ignore the growing sense of discomfort. Despite the abuse, Ethel just wants to make Isaiah happy, clinging to the belief that he loves her. She begs him to not tell her the truth, desperately wanting to preserve the illusion of love, because deep down it's the only thing keeping her going. For Ethel, love has become a lifeline, even if it's built on lies and manipulation. She's trapped in a cycle of self-deception, too afraid to confront the reality of her situation. Ptolemaea is undoubtedly the heaviest track on the album, both musically and thematically. In Dante's Inferno, Ptolemaea is the third ring of hell, a place reserved for those who have committed acts of betrayal. This aligns with Ethel's own sense of guilt, as she feels like she's betrayed her family by straying so far from the values and upbringing she once knew. At this point in the story, Ethel is heavily drugged and vulnerable, making her an easy target for Isaiah, who begins filling her mind with lies and manipulation to keep her under his control. He sees her as innocent and pure, traits he attributes to her sheltered upbringing, which only makes it easier for him to exploit her. Ethel is overwhelmed by a deep sense of hopelessness, regretting ever leaving home and questioning the choices that led her there. She longs for the safety and familiarity of her parents, wishing more than anything that she could return to her mother, but she's trapped in California and her mother is nowhere to be found. Her feelings of isolation and despair intensify when Isaiah becomes violent, with Ethel's blood-curdling screams and desperate pleas for him to stop echoing through the track, adding a haunting layer of urgency and pain. The song ends on a chilling prayer by Isaiah as Ethel flees. He reminds her that her fate is sealed and that she is beyond saving, that death is inevitable. Yet, despite his words, Ethel keeps running, her only act of defiance against the grim reality he's trying to impose on her. This final moment encapsulates Ethel's internal struggle, her determination to escape even though the world around her has grown so dark. August Underground track 10 is inspired by a fake snuff film by the same name. This song tells the story of Ethel trying to escape into a secluded shack in the woods, only to be hunted down and captured by Isaiah, who ultimately murders her. The track is fully instrumental, offering no spoken narrative, and instead leaving the listeners to imagine the details of the encounter, creating a sense of mystery and uncertainty about what exactly happened during this chilling event. Televangelism, yet another instrumental piece, is a hauntingly beautiful piano-driven track that symbolizes Ethel's transition into the afterlife. The delicate melodies create a sense of both peace and melancholy, leaving the listeners to interpret what Ethel's journey beyond life may look like. Without any lyrics or direct narrative, the track allows for a deeply personal experience, encouraging each listener to envision the spiritual or emotional path Ethel takes as she moves into the unknown. Sunbleached Flies is the first track following Ethel's death where we hear her voice, offering a haunting reflection of her past. Despite enduring immense religious trauma, Ethel admits that she misses the sense of belonging and community that her faith once provided. The title Sunbleached Flies may symbolize her relentless but ultimately futile pursuit to happiness. No matter how hard she tried, it only led to her untimely death. Much like a fly drawn to the outside but left dead on the windowsill. As she reflects on her childhood, Ethel recognizes that succumbing to the same violence and pain she experienced would only continue the cycle of generational trauma within her family. Determined to break free from this cycle, Ethel becomes resolute to standing up for herself, rejecting the passive acceptance of life's hardships. She comes to terms with the fact that God would never save her, and in death, finally realizes that it's up to her to save herself. Yet even in the afterlife, her thoughts are consumed with Willoughby. She still clings to the vision of the symbolic house in Nebraska, a dream she never fulfilled in life, but one she holds on to in death. Despite everything she's been through, Ethel refuses to abandon hope, finding comfort in the idea that even in death, there might be still something worth holding on to. We close the album with Strangers, the most gruesome track, bringing the story full circle. We return to Hayden's grandmother's funeral with an audio clip from the church echoing the earlier themes of Ethel's past. Now in Isaiah's basement, Ethel reflects on the childhood warning, "Don't talk to strangers," realizing that if she had listened, none of this would have happened. Ethel is now in Isaiah's freezer, where he plans to eat her, a fate he eventually fulfills. She reflects on not seeing herself as tough, both in terms of her own strength and her body, which Isaiah will consume. Even in her final moments, she worries about pleasing Isaiah, but Now her concern is whether she tastes good. Ethel becomes a detached narrator, commenting on Isaiah's actions, saying things like, "You're so handsome walking over to me now," and "Am I making you feel sick?" Meanwhile, Ethel's mother, Ethel Cain, finds her daughter's face on a missing person's milk carton, but she will never know the truth of Ethel's fate. In the album's closing moments, Ethel meets her father in the afterlife, telling him she doesn't blame him for how he loved her. She then says a final goodbye to her mother, reassuring her that they will meet again, offering a bittersweet sense of closure. And that wraps up Ethel Cain's story. Ethel's story is not one for the weak, but it's incredible how one woman has brought together a story like this and plans to continue building on the narrative. Hayden plans to release a Preacher's Daughter B-sides at some point, delving into more detail with Willoughby and Ethel. It was originally believed that this was coming after Preacher's Daughter, but recently we got the announcement of Hayden's second studio album, Perverts, an album that once again does not connect to the Ethel Cain storyline, but is an exploration of sound. It's unknown if Preacher's Daughter's B-sides are going to come after Perverts or not at all, but they exist and hopefully they do come. She also plans on adapting the storyline into a movie and a book, as for the same as the other two parts of the trilogy. But that's all we have for now, and I hope you enjoyed. If you've never watched a video by me, my name is Charlie and I do pop culture deep dives, reactions and other fun videos. I'll be doing Vlogmas this year, so make sure to tune in. But until next time, bye for now.